Welcome to Mentors on Tap, everybody. I'm Steve Grenzer with Steam Driven Media, and my buddy over there, Doc Sheldon, with Intrinsic Value SEO, among other things. And I think this week we're going to have a conversation about setting expectations with clients and maybe even get into a little bit of pricing yourself. Uh, we all do this from time to time where we let clients kind of walk on us when we know better. I know I do it. I'm sure Doc's done it. Well, I know he lets me do it to him when I hire him for things. But we had a conversation with a mutual friend not too long ago where he had allowed his primary client to basically abuse him for over a year. And when it gets to that point, the customer has no longer any respect for what you do. They treat you as a cog in a machine at that point, and generally don't listen to you for whatever reason. You may be the smartest guy in the room, but because they've pushed you so far down on their pecking order by the way they've treated you, and you've allowed them to do this, they no longer want to listen to what you have to say. I know I've been in that position with several clients over the years, and generally, for me at least, the only solution to that has been to fire the client, because they're very hard to retrain. For an example, for one of my clients, I worked with him for 5 years, and I constantly made certain suggestions to his business model and the way he did things, and I was totally ignored. And so were other people who worked for him, because we were in that employee role where we were making $30 an hour or whatever. And it wasn't until he hired a $10,000 a month business coach who told him exactly the same things we had told him that he actually listened. His business model has changed dramatically since then. He's financially far more well off than he's ever been. His stress levels are far lower than they've ever been. And it's wonderful for him. On my side of the coin, it sucks because I tried and he wouldn't listen to me because I allowed him to put me in a position where my opinion didn't matter. I was just an employee.
Yep.
Have you had that issue?
I have, to a degree. I used to do it a lot until about 7 or 8 years ago, and I started doing it again about 3 years ago. Try to carry about 10% of my workable hours as pro bono stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's always a battle with that, because when somebody's getting something for free, that kind of sets their mind that the value of this stuff can't be very great, or they wouldn't be getting it handed over to them free. And it's not always the case. Sometimes people are very appreciative, but it is difficult when you undervalue yourself. And I've done it on price jobs as well. Sometimes just because I didn't use enough foresight when I was pricing it, or I didn't set expectations well enough. And sometimes just because of scope creep, it just sneaks up on you, and you suddenly realize that for the last 6 months, you've been doing 3 times as much as your original scope of work was supposed to involve. So you've been doing it for 6 months. Now, how do you back off without seeming to be a major creep? And that can really destroy a client-vendor relationship in a hurry.
Yes, it can. I have gotten in this habit. Now I have a charity that I'm working with now that I took on. A friend of mine from years ago, when I played Guild Wars a lot, was one of the guild leaders, and he's now head of a charity, and we got hooked back up. And I volunteered to build their new website and get them all set up with all the training they needed so they could manage this themselves in-house. And what I'm finding is, one, they took far too long to get me the information I needed to build the website until they had a crucial meeting coming up, and then everything had to be done now. And I just simply said no, because I pointed to all the emails where I had constantly asked for the data that I needed and wasn't given, and put it on him and said, look, this is your problem. The other thing I get from them on a fairly regular basis is, we need such and such page updated with, they do a lot of videos, for example, and they host all their videos on Vimeo. And importing them into the website's easy for us because this is what we do. For them, I'm asking them to take a rock and a bucket of water and start a fire. So what I have done is I now, whenever I have a task that's repetitive like that, I do it for them, but I also do a screen grab video. I do my voiceover and explain how it's done. I upload the video to YouTube, a YouTube channel with a, an unlisted playlist that's just their website, just their stuff. And then the next time they ask me to do that specific task, I send them a link to the video. And so we've already had this discussion. Here's the video that shows you how to do that. Boom. And I get it off my plate. It's no longer my problem. And I've set that expectation very early and very, very strictly with them. And in the long run, they're going to appreciate it because now they're going to have this wealth of knowledge locked away that they can have anybody there look at the video and go, oh, that's how that's done. And they'll be fine.
Even if they bring on new people, they can actually train their new people with those.
And it gets me out of that role because I'm not getting paid. I'm a volunteer. And I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to be the guy they email every month that says, hey, we need our videos updated. That's just simply not going to happen.
Yeah.
That becomes their problem.
No, that's a great approach, actually, putting videos up.
And that's something that, pro tip, everybody can do because Snagit's cheap. You can do all these screen grabs and trust me, your clients will love this kind of shit because it makes their lives easier too. Because eventually, I tell them, I said, bookmark this playlist. All your videos will always be here. I have no intention of shutting down my YouTube account anytime soon. So there they are. You're good to go.
Well, plus even with paying clients, they can appreciate that because the option is you're going to bill them for 2 hours to walk them through some training, or you're going to give it to them one time and they can use it 16 times.
Yeah. If you play it right, you just make it an add-on.
Yeah, but the beauty of it is that they kind of see that you're looking out for their wallet too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That way you're not hitting them with billable hours for repetitive tasks that anybody can do. And now that we have revision history and baked right into WordPress, for example, I'm not even worried about them completely destroying something because then all I have to do is roll back to the last version that I did. And I know we're good.
Yeah.
So, that's a huge deal. But it really does come down to being a hard ass about your client's expectations of what they expect you to do. Whether it's scope creep or hour creep, that's another big one where they just want a few more hours and a few more hours. And all of a sudden you find yourself working 20 or 30 hours a week for one guy. And that's the job. I don't want a job. I don't know about you, but I didn't get into this business to start my own business to have a job.
Well, that's where expectations really come into play. And that's always another battle too, trying to, I've gotten to the point, I know a lot of our mutual colleagues that do not, in fact, I think you've even said, you don't normally have a contract. You set a quote and you've got a scope, but you don't really do a contract. And I've gotten to where I'm just getting anal about documentation simply because then I can say, okay, here's this 17-point itemized list of what I said I would do and you bought into and you paid me for, and that is what I will do. If you want this, see paragraph 2A, there's the adder for additional hours in 4-hour minimum blocks, and that it puts a lot of those arguments to bed. And if the guy's bright enough to look at that contract more than just the once, he'll actually be able to see those things and maybe make some intelligent decisions and just do it himself or do without it, rather than developing into a pissing contest,
See, and my perspective is I consider email as my solution for that. I've had clients who they'll call me and say, I need you to do this. I said, great, send it to me in an email.
Yeah.
I don't take those types of directions over the phone ever.
No, you can't.
Will not happen. I won't do it. And I tell them on the phone, I said, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just I'll forget. Because by the time I hang up the phone, my brain's already moved on to the next thing. I'm terrible about that. And I know that. So my inbox is my schedule and my task list for the most part.
Exactly.
And when somebody says, well, you said you would do this, I can go back through the emails and say, look, here are the emails and here's what you respond. Here's what I said and here's what you responded to. this is my documentation that shows where we are. And the very first email usually lays out in clear detail, this is what I'm going to do. My whole issue with contracts, and I get the need for them, I really do. But I also understand that contracts are only as good as the person who signs them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I need a contract to enforce somebody to pay me for whatever reason, I don't want to work with them.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I'm in a position where I can be picky that way. Where somebody, for example, I had a client or a potential client, this would have been 12, 15 years ago. We were going to, back when cell phone stores were new, no, there weren't a lot of them. And he had 5 or 6 locations, and we were going to write the software that tied all his locations together and gave him running inventory and all that across all the stores. And it was kind of a big deal back then. And we got through the whole budget, the whole process, and we got ready, and my business partners wanted me to have him sign his big, thick, fat contract. And I was already kind of starting to feel weird about this particular job anyway. And so we sat down and I presented the final contract, and he loved it. And he said he just wanted to change one thing. Like, great, one thing, easy. What do you want to change? He wanted to change the location of the contract, what legally, where the laws were.
Yeah.
He wanted to change, thank you, jurisdiction. He wanted to change it from California, which is where our company was based, to where he was. And I'm like, well, that seems kind of strange because the laws here suck when it comes to technology. They don't understand it. Where we're from, technology is a common thing, and the laws understand that. And he goes, well, that's not really the problem. He goes, my problem is if something happens down the road and I need to sue you, I don't want to have to go clear to California to do it.
There's a red flag.
It's like I took a deep breath, paused for a moment, and said, wow, I'm really sorry to have wasted so much of your time. I picked up my contract, shook his head, and walked out the door.
There you go.
He's like, what do you mean? It's like, no, I'm done. If you're concerned about how to sue me now.
I took a series of Carnegie courses many years ago when I was a marketing manager for a company in Texas. And one of them was about negotiation and contracts. And one of the points that the instructor made was jurisdiction. He says, contracts keep honest people honest. Every contract can be broken if somebody really wants to break it. So here's the things you want to make sure you've got. You set it up this way, this way, this way, this way. One of those things being jurisdiction local to you. Is the first big red flag you're going to get if they want to change the terms of payment, if they want to go out 60 days instead of 30. Second red flag you're going to get if they want to change jurisdiction. If they want local jurisdiction to them, this means they have every intention of fucking using it.
Yes.
He says, walk away from run away from those people, because if they're worried about where their lawyer is going to have to attend court, they intend to use that lawyer, and you don't want that guy for a client. And, I've never had that arise, but it certainly makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I that burned that so far into my brain, and it made me realize that contracts, from my perspective, are going to be used as tools by lawyers. And I'm not a big fan of lawyers. I'm not a big fan going to court. I'm perfectly content to walk away from clients. If they want to hire somebody else, I thank them for their business, hand over the keys, and walk.
There you go.
And then in the grand scheme of things, a fair percentage of them come back. So, and a fewer, much smaller number don't come back, mostly because they're ashamed. Because they did screw up. I'm going to lose one client here real soon, no doubt about it, because they went ahead and they hired the Yellow Pages to handle some of their marketing. And I know how that's going to turn out. So, and there's nothing I can do about that. And I get it. I understand why they're doing it. I don't agree with it, and I explained my reasons why, but I have no doubt within 2 months, I'll be done. Something will happen. I will be accused of something by the Yellow Pages team, because that's what they do.
Yep.
And it's on the client to who they're going to believe. And I'm not up for that fight, and I'm not up for putting my client in that position. So,
I don't think either one of us is billing a high enough hourly rate to put up with that kind of crap.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Life's too short.
Well, speaking of billable rates, there's another system that works for me. It may not work for everybody. We have a lot of people who way undervalue themselves. It's just what it is. People don't think they should get paid what they should get paid. And it's an ingrown thing. I mean, if you've never really made a lot of money, it doesn't make sense to, if you're used to making $15 or $20 an hour, it's really hard to convince yourself to charge somebody $100 an hour. Imposter syndrome kicks in really hard when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So a method that I learned or developed or whatever 25 years ago when I was first starting out in tech in California, at the time I could not, in my own head, justify billing more than $30 an hour. And this would have been in the late 90s. And back then that was pretty good money.
Yeah.
But I had friends who were billing $125, $200 an hour. And I'm like, you don't know any more than I do. How do you justify that much money? And how do you find clients willing to pay that? So what I started doing was, when I got to the point where, let's say I only wanted to work 40 hours a week, when I got to where I was consistently billing between 30 and 40 hours a week, I raised my prices. So, and it might have been, the first couple of raises were pretty healthy. They were $10 an hour jumps. But I would go from 30 to 40 or 40 to 50. And what you find happens is you will lose clients off the bottom
and pick them
because
up
they don't want to pay that much.
Yeah.
But you're going to pick up more at the top because they didn't trust you before because you didn't charge enough.
Yeah.
They go, well, why are you only charging $30 an hour when this guy's charging 80? Well, the guy charging 80 must be better than you. And
I went through that too, Steve, when I first started out. I've been asked that question. Why are you so cheap? That concerns me. Why are you so cheap? And I said, well, I'm sitting in my dining room. Okay, I don't have overhead. I'm a one-man operation. My household has electricity. I'm going to pay the electricity whether I use it on your job or not. So I'm not covering any of that overhead. And it's a pretty hollow argument, really. When I first started out, when I first delved into copywriting, I was charging literally, I was doing 350-word blog posts for $2 freaking. Okay. I mean, because nobody knew me. Nobody knew me. And I was still learning to boot. So I would knock 8 or 10 of these things out a day and call it good, And then I was getting, like you say, you're getting to where you're pushing a 60-hour week. Okay, $5 a piece, $10 a piece, $15 a piece. Now I charge $125, $130 for a 500-word blog post, and I don't have any problem. We're got through hiring 3 more writers just to keep up. So, it's just, and the quality of my writing is somewhat better, I'm sure, than it was 20 years ago, but not that much. The cost of living hasn't gone up that much. I was way underpricing because I was trying to break in someplace where everybody at Demand Media and all these copy houses were swarming with ESL writers. And at the time it made sense for me, but if I caught one of my proteges today doing that, I just have to slap them upside the back of the head because that was the worst approach of all to take.
I'm sure I'm losing money, but I'm making it up in volume.
Yeah, exactly. I'm only losing $4 a piece, but I'll make it up in volume.
Exactly. But and that's part of this whole customer expectation issue. I've also found that if you don't raise your rates on a reasonably regular basis, like every 2 years, you'll find yourself with clients you've had for 10 years who are used to paying nothing compared to what you are really worth.
I'm really glad we're recording this because I want to remind you, my friend, that you've been using my copywriting services for a little over a decade now, and I've hit you with precisely 1 increase. So, so if you get a Christmas card, don't be surprised.
That's okay. I was going to think about testing out Demand Media anyway. But it breaks my heart a little bit to have all these people, especially the younger people coming in. People who are established, who've been around like we have, and they're still letting themselves be taken advantage like that. I put a lot of that on them for not growing professionally. They may have grown technically, their skill level has gone significantly, but for running a professional business, they have not improved any.
Well,
and that takes effort.
That's something that entrepreneurs typically don't find or even look for the time to learn. Yeah. They just, they're getting better at their job. They're talking to more interesting prospects. They're getting more satisfaction out of what they're doing, but they're never looking at things like how to structure their business, how to manage client relations, how to handle their taxes. The business aspects often are ignored until it's often too late.
That's why a lot of companies, when they start getting big, have to hire an adult to run the place.
There you go.
I mean, that's what happened to Google. They had to bring in the adults to run the place. Yeah. And the adults did a very good job for a long time. It's same thing happened at Apple and just about every other company. At some point, you have to be less of an employee of your business and more of the owner and director of your business. Yeah. And that's really hard for a lot of us.
It's hard to let go.
Well, especially if you're a solo person, if you don't have any employees, it's really hard to behave like you do, if that makes sense. Yeah. You have to think of your business as a business and less of a job.
Yeah, it's not your baby anymore. Yeah.
And hopefully you can learn and grow from that. And it's a topic that I absolutely love talking about. So if anybody has any questions or wants to talk more about how to run their business or just wants some advice, I am always available for that discussion. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world these days is when I do on-site business consulting, where I go and spend 4 or 5 days in the business, seeing how everything runs, talking to the employees, working out all of the areas where they can improve the business itself and tweak the way they run their business. The last place I went, we spent 4 days there, and I handed him a 45-page report, which I don't think he ever actually read, which is fine. I think we've continued to have ongoing conversations since then. We try to get together about once a month on the phone and kind of I rattle his cage a little bit about things that he knows he should be doing, which is kind of fun to do. It's like, so did you do these things? No. Why? And he's like, yeah, I know. It's like, well, that's not good enough, because your employees want to have better lives too. And for you to provide better lives for your employees, you have to build a better business.
More importantly, your employees will get a better life. The question is, are they going to get it with you, or are they going to get it across the street with the other guy?
Yes, exactly. Or will they start their own competing with you?
Yeah, even worse.
That would be what my focus did.
I was a business consultant for almost 20 years before I got to working online, and it's the same thing. And I think I've even said to you, we found that most of the companies that were in dire straits after like 3 years were the companies that had tremendous success and outgrew their ability to manage the business. They didn't bring in any adults, and they hadn't quite matured themselves, or they never bothered to look at these different aspects. Just little things like managing cash flow. So many youngsters that have a fantastic idea in a ripe market, but they're used to living hand to mouth, and if they got cash in the account, they're going to spend it on some shiny thing, and then they can't make payroll, or then they can't pay the taxes, or then they lose out on an opportunity to develop their business. And I can't tell you how many times I saw that. And I did the same thing. I'd go in for anywhere from a week to 10 days, and I would deliver a 3-part message. here's what I see as your processing issues. Just develop your anything from what do you call it? God, I just went blank. Your work in process or your supply chain or how you're handling your materials to personnel issues. This guy's a dud. He needs to go. He's abusing his employees, whatever. This person has fantastic potential, and she's wasted in that position. Yeah. And here's where you need to fix your cash issues. This is where you should be putting your money, not here. And invariably, the pushback I always got was on personnel issues. Yeah, I know he's a dick, but he's been here for 16 years, or he's been here with me since the beginning. You know what? He's going to be with you till the end, too. The problem is he's going to be the thing tied at the end of your anchor line that pulls you down.
Yeah. and it's hard to fire people. I get it.
It is. Especially when you like them, especially when they were there back when and they've been loyal. But everybody develops at a different pace. And sometimes the CEO or the founder or the guy that runs the warehouse has outgrown their ability.
I worked with a small mom and pop shop. They had 5 or 6 employees. It was run by a husband and wife team. And they could not get any more out of what they were doing, or so they thought. But looking at them and comparing them to other mom and pop shops in the same niche, other shops were doing 2 to 3 times the businesses they were with the same or fewer people.
There's a bottleneck somewhere.
And we sat down after about 3 after about 3 days, we sat down and had a conversation, and I talked to the owners, and it's like, here's what I would do. I would fire everybody right now. I would walk out, close the doors, lock them, fire everyone. And then in the morning, you're hiring. They are more than welcome to come back and reapply under the new rules.
There you go.
This is the only way, because if you keep them and don't have a hard line in the sand, they're not going to change. And so we spent the next 24 hours writing up a new employee manual, new process manuals, the whole bit. It was ridiculous how much. I did not charge that group anywhere near enough money for what we did. But we did. We literally fired everybody, sent them all home, and told them in 48 hours on Monday morning, after the weekend, if you want to come back and work here, please come in, apply,
bring a resume,
and bring your. Don't necessarily need to bring a resume, but if you want to come back and work under the new rules, you can have your job back. But there are new rules. And we did. We made them fill out new applications, new W-9, all of it. Yeah. And then handed them the new manuals and said, these are the rules. If you cannot follow these rules, you're out. And we had a couple just simply not come back because we knew, and those were the ones we knew had to go. Yeah. And the rest wound up picking up the slack, and actually you'll find that a lot of people appreciate having structure, just like children crave structure.
Sure.
Employees crave. And you fly less by the seat of your pants and more with some kind of guided direction.
There's nothing that'll throw your workforce out of kilter faster than not being sure what's expected of them or what they can expect from management. God, that's terrible. I've been there. I've worked for people like that. That sucks. You got some guy who's bipolar. He may come and pat you on the back one moment and stab you in the back the next for the same thing. Yeah. That's no way to live. And nobody's getting paid enough for that.
I worked at a company where one of the owners enjoyed pitting employees against each other.
Oh.
He'd go in and just make shit up and say it to one employee, say, well, I kind of heard so-and-so saying this. And get the 2 or 3 or 4 employees going at each other just because he liked to watch.
In the military, that man would have had a blanket party.
Well, we went ahead, and after we finally figured out what he was doing, we let him go ahead and spin 3 or 4 of us all up at the same time, and we all quit and walked out en masse. And he was like, wait, what?
Shut down the division.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, oh. So we had to retrain him. But anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. important that you set those expectations with your clients, because you're basically, what you let them do to you is what you're training them to do to you in the future. And if you're letting
Well
them
put.
gouge you for free hours or low pay or unreasonable requests or scope creep or anything, they're just going to keep doing it because that's what you're allowing them to do.
You're encouraging them to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be, an asshole about it, although that is fun sometimes. All you have to do is just remind them that this was the scope that we set out. More than happy to do these other things for you. That's going to cost this. And make it an add-on. Don't let them get it for free. If it's your hourly rate, great. If it's a project-based rate, that's fine too. It doesn't matter how you charge it. Or even if you charge them, as long as you structure it in such a way that you are not unhappy about the results.
Well, the whole thing is that any business relationship, whether it be a partnership or a client-vendor relationship, it has to be good for both parties, which implies that it should be fair. So you don't take undue advantage just because you've got the guy over a barrel and he needs you and he doesn't have anybody else that could possibly do it. But there's nothing wrong with letting him know that you understand that, so you hope he realizes you're being fair, and here's how you're going to structure your rate accordingly. You can beat your own drum a little bit in that regard, but by the same token, I have literally, and I could show it to you, at least privately, Steve. I sent a guy an invoice for $1 with a $49 pain in the ass add-on.
Mm-hmm.
I've
been there.
Just because you were a dick, here's $49 add-on. This add-on can be avoided in future if you outgrow this.
Exactly. We used to have in the pizza business, we used to have our $2 idiot fee. That's for the person that calls you at 8:00 in the evening and says, "Are you open?" Let me think. I deliver pizzas. It's 8:00 and I answered the phone. I'm going to go with yes.
I'm going to go with yes. Yeah. Oh,
so, but yeah, it's just been, I like I said, I hate to see people taken advantage of, and allowing themselves to be taken advantage of. So if you need some help or you want some advice on how to deal with a very specific issue, if you want, we'll keep it private. Doc and I are more than happy. Well, we'll be happy to talk to anybody and give you some advice. We may change the names, the dates, and the locations just so we can talk about you later. But any resemblance to persons living and or dead is purely coincidental.
Yeah, well, and discussions like that, if you decide to call one of us, discussions like that, even if we can't give you the ideal answer, just the discussion itself can spark enough thought that you may come up with the best answer for you yourself. So it's always helpful talking things out with somebody that understands what you're going through. So yeah, by all means, reach out to either of us anytime.
So like I said, if you have any questions or you want to talk more or anything else about business, let us know. We're happy to have a conversation. And I guess we'll see you on the next video.
Bye all. Have a great week.